Hello, welcome back. It is now day 16. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I really do appreciate all of your hard work, and I hope that this series has been helpful and a little bit insightful so far. Today we're going to continue on with our evidence-based medicine week, and we are looking at our first pillar of lifestyle medicine today, which is our whole food plant-based diet. And again, with our evidence-based medicine week, we're going to be taking a look at an article that was published revolving around the concept or the pillar that we're discussing that day, and we'll take a look at some of the findings as well as some of the limitations of the article. So let's get started with today. We're going to be looking at this article titled "The Effect of an Anti-Inflammatory Diet on Chronic Pain, a Pilot Study." So I'm going to break it down using this PICO criteria so we can take a look and see the population discussed in this article are patients with chronic pain associated with rheumatic diseases such as arthritis, osteoarthritis, and fibromyalgia. The intervention that is in this study is an anti-inflammatory diet, which is going to exclude red meat, gluten, and cow milk over the course of 4 months. The comparison study is going to be kind of the baseline measurements of these individuals and then follow-up of pain and quality of life before and after this intervention of a anti-inflammatory diet. And then the outcome will be these change in pain levels, including quality of life, stress, and depression. So let's look at how the study was conducted. So it started out on the left-hand side with a cohort of 45 patients. So there are 45 patients in total in this study. And as we follow the little arrow to the right, we see at the first visit, all of these individuals had to go through a handful of steps, a handful of things. So the first thing they did was a 24-hour food recall and food frequency questionnaire. That's what that FFQ stands for. So these individuals kind of wrote down all the different foods and food quantities that they tend to eat in their daily life. So this is their baseline. They also did a bunch of different questionnaires and measurements, including a nutritional assessment, a sleep questionnaire, a depression scale, as well as some health assessment questionnaires and cognitive impairment testing as well. At this time, these patients were provided with curcumin, which is basically turmeric, as well as black pepper. They were given just a bottle of this to supplement themselves for the next 12 weeks, and we'll kind of talk about that in a minute. And then they were also given a nutritional diary to track their food for the remainder of the 12 weeks or 4 months that they did this study for. At the second visit, they were issued a diet plan, so a dietitian. They met with a dietitian, and they kind of worked out what their actual diet was going to look like for the next 12 weeks. So the first visit and the second visit were back-to-back days. They were just, they wanted to split it up because it was kind of a long day each time. Then their third through seventh visits, these were kind of like follow-ups, check-ins, where patients kind of talked about their diet plan with the dietitian, and they repeated a lot of these different measurements that they had originally done at the first visit. And then the last visit, again, they repeated most of these questionnaires that were completed the first visit. So on the right-hand side, you can see some of the testing that was used. We talked about most of them earlier, but basically the characteristics that were assessed throughout this study were nutrition, pain, stress, depression, disability, sleep quality, and cognitive impairment. And you can see there were a bunch of different tests and surveys that were used to analyze these different qualities of life and measurements. This image here is an example of the dietary plan that they were given by a dietitian. So the first column lists the food, in the middle the importance, and then consumption frequency, or how frequently per day they should be eating these things. So the first thing was extra virgin olive oil, super rich in antioxidants, as well as really good fatty acids. They should be eating about 3 tablespoons a day. Fruits, again, kind of keeping a variety of fruits, really great for anti-inflammation. We should be having 3 portions a day. Nuts, again, good fatty acids, Vitamins and minerals, about 30 grams a day. Vegetables, 2 portions per day. Plain yogurt, about 1 portion per day. Again, a very good anti-inflammatory, as well as providing our gut with some good bacteria. Coffee. Coffee actually tends to be, we kind of get scared of coffee because we tend to put a lot of sugar and we put a lot of milks and heavy creams in our coffees, but this coffee was specifically designated as black coffee without added sugar or added milks. People were encouraged to drink less than 3 cups a day, but encouraged to drink at least 1 cup. Eggs. So eggs were part of this dietary regimen. 3 to 4 eggs per week. Again, eggs can be high in cholesterol, so sometimes we want to steer clear of going too gung-ho on eggs. Fish, 3 portions per week, so that's more than most people tend to eat. Legumes is a great source of protein for individuals consuming lower amounts of animal protein. Red meat, they were encouraged to only eat this occasionally and encouraged to try and cut it out completely of their diets if possible. Cow milk, they were advised to avoid completely. And then we have gluten, also to avoid completely, and then curcumin. So curcumin is turmeric. Turmeric is what the participants were provided at the beginning of the experiment. Curcumin, we don't tend to eat in our daily lives very frequently. It's not like naturally in anything, and most people don't tend to add it as a seasoning or spice to their food. These individuals were encouraged to use the curcumin in their daily diets, as well as the black pepper. Black pepper actually increases the absorption of curcumin, so that's why it's advised to consume those together. This is the results of the study, and it looks kind of chaotic, but what I want to kind of do is break it down a little bit. So we're going to look at the left-hand side, and these are our changes in food consumption. So it's kind of split into healthy diet, anti-inflammatory food, and pro-inflammatory foods. And then on the top, it says change in indications of lost quality of life. So basically, if we look at the color scheme in this chart, green represents positive changes or positive correlations between the columns. So for example, if we look at the super dark green box with the 3 stars in it, next to the gluten-free heading and under the pain heading, that basically means that going gluten-free had a very significant positive change in these reported pain levels of patients. We can kind of follow that gluten-free column all the way across, and there tends to be a lot of dark green. So the darker the green, the more the correlation is significant or statistically significant. And then if we look at the kind of reddish or brown color, it indicates a negative correlation or a decrease in quality of life between these factors. So if we look at, for example, under the pain column, once again, we have refined grains. So consuming refined grains is associated with a kind of a negative impact or a negative or a decrease in quality of life related to pain scores. So we can kind of look around and find some things that are super interesting that make a lot of sense. Like, for example, that gluten-free tab tends to be super green. Most of those boxes are green, meaning there's a positive correlation or an increase in quality of life. But interestingly, if we look at, for example, the other fruit column or the other fruit row, and we see that dark red or dark brown under sleep. So for some reason, there was a correlation between fruit and sleep disruption, indicating a kind of a negative or a decrease in quality of life in that column. So we can kind of take these results with a grain of salt, but we do see kind of the upper portion of the graph and the mid portion of the chart under the anti-inflammatory and healthy diet tends to look a little bit more green than that bottom part of the chart, which are the pro-inflammatory foods, which are more closely associated with a decrease in quality of life. So very interesting results that we have here. So let's look at some of the analysis and the limitations of this study. So we saw that despite these promising findings, the study may have several limitations. So first off is going to be the small sample size, only 45 participants. That's actually really small when it comes to a study that we can get significant value from. The pretty short duration as well, 4 months, may not be sufficient enough time to assess long-term impacts of dietary intervention. So diet tends to be something that we need to implement for a longer period of time in order to see any changes. Is 4 months enough? We did see some, correlations on the previous page, but would those correlations look slightly different if this study had gone for, say, a year, 2 years, 5 years? Also, a lack of a control group. So every single subject or every single individual that enrolled in this trial went through the intervention process, meaning all of them participated in dietary change. There was no group that we call the control group that underwent a placebo type picture or did not have any intervention in terms of dietary changes, but also filled out all of these surveys. So sometimes when we go through a process that makes us think about, our quality of life and our sleep quality, our pain scales, we can kind of subconsciously have changes to those qualities of our life over time, even if there's no intervention done. So lack of control group could be kind of a confounding factor there. And then also self-reported data. So all of the data collected in this paper was from questionnaires. So questionnaires tend to be a little bit challenging when it comes to analyzing the quality of data that you receive, just because each individual does have to self-report. So a very interesting study shows that our diet and anti-inflammatory diet is definitely kind of something to consider when it comes to improving our overall pain, sleep quality, and whatnot. But again, doing some research and looking at papers really closely, we can get some more information. So I hope you enjoyed today. I really like doing a deep dive in papers like these, and there's 1.5 million of papers on the web. If you're interested, sometimes just like Google Scholar is a great way to look and find papers that you don't have to pay for or subscribe for. We'll be back tomorrow when we look at an article about physical activity. Everybody have a great day.